Greetings, Reggie Middleton, coming in to arriving to weigh in on the latest crop of bank earnings reports for Q3 2015. My first video in this series basically went over the horrible macro environment for money center banks globally, particularly Asia, Central, Western, Southern, and Northern Europe, and the U.S. JP Morgan had weighed in, and I had came in, and I weighed in again with JP Morgan's results, basically down revenues across the board. They did some belt tightening, some prestidigitation. They were able to get a slight increase in earnings, but as you know, when the money's not coming in the door, it's very hard to get it to come out the other side. Okay, so here we're weighing in with Citibank, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and JP Morgan. The same story all the way around with a slight differentiation. So Morgan Stanley, horrible results. Down from each segment, down up to 46% on the top line and the bottom line. Goldman Sachs, same story. Yet revenues fell on the top line, revenues fell on the bottom line, both sequentially, quarter over quarter, and year over year. Goldman Sachs did do some extra special, Muppet Master style prestidigitation, and they had an increase in earnings, but that increase in earnings, of course, came at the expense of things that are very valuable to investment banks. What Goldman Sachs did was they chopped their compensation. Now, everybody who knows the banking industry knows that bankers have very little brand loyalty. Basically, they follow the money. That's why most people become bankers. They usually don't want to make the world a better place. They want a large paycheck. By chopping compensation, that makes the employees very, very flighty. They also have the largest price decrease was the other section, other as in quotation marks. That should scare anybody who's interested in Goldman Sachs's profit attributed to common as a common shareholder, because other is inexplicable. Of course, I didn't go through every line of the fine print, but that probably would be necessary just to come close to ascertaining what other is. So between other and compensation, that's how Goldman Sachs took a significant drop in revenues to an increase in profit. Okay, if that was normalized quarter over quarter or year after year, you have a significant drop in profit as well, which one should expect for next quarter. Now we have the other banks, the non-pure investment banks, that would be Citibank and JP Morgan. They have, of course, a significant drop in revenues, as I guaranteed, but they have a much more modified drop or even potential slight increase in earnings. That's only year over year, quarter over quarter, they still fell. The reason they did this is because their consumer banks are subsidizing their commercial and institutional businesses. Basically, the savings account for mom and pops and the CDs, etc., the safe FDIC-insured accounts are throwing off enough to cover a lot of the holes that are popping up in proprietary trading, investment banking, etc., etc., etc. So, with that being said, if you remember the videos that I did on disintermediation, financial disintermediation in the banks, and the blockchain technologies, and how these technologies could potentially help or hurt the banks, unfortunately, due to, I think, the management perception in banks and their slow time to reaction, I think they do much more harm than good. This is a horrible time to be selling technology to banks, which is why our firm is actually attempting to sell the technology to everybody. Actually, we're giving the technology away for free. Our profit margin is basically purely transaction-based. Everybody gets it without cost. So you combine the disintermediation with my take on the macro scene, which has been proven absolutely correct. I'll link the other two videos. And I will also put a snapshot of the actual earnings results from Q3 2015, both compared to last quarter and this time last year. Looks like a beginning of a nightmare. Okay? Expect 2008 to happen all over again, this time worse, because instead of being too big to fail, the banks are too bigger to fail. But now we have blockchain tech to the rescue. Next, we'll compare all the virtues of Veritasium technology, particularly the reboot as we're going to beta 3 using ultra-thin HTML wallets and clients. And again, referencing the other video, a bank is nothing but a hosted wallet. Your bank account is nothing but a digital currency account.
And leave it to contrarian badass Reggie Middleton.
Reggie walks in looking really cool. He's got a Google Glass on, and I'm like, man, that's cool. And
did he walk like that?
Yeah, he walked like that. That's how you walk if you've got Google Glass on. Everyone walks real cool.
Reggie Middleton.
Reggie Middleton.
Reggie Middleton.
Reggie Middleton.
Oh, he doesn't mince his words. We're talking about Reggie Middleton.
So far ahead of everybody and so detailed, and then he started warning about Bear Stearns and Lehman. Well, he was so far ahead of the curve, I actually thought he was nuts.
He called the housing crash. He called the collapse of Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers. He's been harping on the crisis in the Eurozone banking system for years now, so he's just the guy to talk to.
He told us how 0% interest rates were starving the banks, that it was designed to save. Now, at the time, you were the only analyst in the world to mention that it would starve the banks, and you've been proven correct.
Reggie Middleton, who nailed Facebook, by the way.
Crown the champion, the winner of the first ever CNBC Stocks Draft.
Yay!
Reggie Middleton!
It was Google, which was up by 46%.
Reggie!
Well done, Reggie Middleton. But you know what, Reggie? This is a double amazing feat, because last year you won as well.
I mean, not to be impolite, but what makes you so special that they all want to read your blog?
I can step on toes and be objective and offensively honest.